The email notification flashed across Dante Russo's phone at 11:47 p.m. He was in the middle of a meeting with his underboss, discussing a shipment problem that had cost them $2 million, when the sound cut through the tension in the room like a knife. He glanced down. The sender's name made everyone at the table go silent. Elena Torres. His secretary. Dante's jaw tightened. Elena never sent him emails this late. She was meticulous about boundaries, almost painfully so. In the 6 months she'd worked for him, she'd been nothing but professional, quiet, efficient, practically invisible in the way she moved through his world without making waves. "Give me a minute," Dante said, his voice flat. His underboss, Marco, nodded and gestured for the others to step outside. They filed out quickly, leaving Dante alone in the conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he controlled. He opened the email. Subject line, blank. Message body, empty. Attachment, one photo. Dante clicked on it before his brain could register what he was doing. The image loaded, and for a moment, his entire world stopped. It was Elena, in her apartment, judging by the background. The photo was intimate, not explicit, but vulnerable in a way that made Dante's chest constrict. She was wearing something soft and light, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in the severe bun she always wore at work. Her expression was uncertain, almost shy, like she was trying to be confident but didn't quite know how. This wasn't meant for him. This was meant for someone else. A boyfriend, probably. Someone she was trying to impress, trying to be brave for. And she'd accidentally sent it to her boss. To Dante Russo. To the man whose reputation for ruthlessness made grown men cross themselves when they heard his name. Dante stared at the photo for 3 full minutes, his mind cataloging details he had no business noticing. The way her collarbone caught the light, the nervous energy in her eyes, the small scar on her left shoulder that he'd never seen before because she always wore high-necked blouses to work. Then he closed the email and set his phone face down on the table. His hands were shaking. Dante Russo's hands never shook. If you're wondering what happens when a single mistake breaks through years of carefully constructed emotional armor, stay with us. This is a story about power, vulnerability, and the dangerous line between protection and obsession. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss how this unfolds. 3 hours passed before Dante emerged from his office. He'd sent Marco and the others home, claiming he needed to think about the shipment problem alone. In reality, he'd spent those 3 hours staring at his phone, trying to decide what to do about Elena Torres. The protocol was clear. She'd crossed a line. Accidentally, yes, but crossed it nonetheless. In his world, accidents didn't matter. Only consequences did. He should fire her. Immediately. Publicly, to make an example. That's what the old Dante would have done. The Dante from before Isabella Moretti had betrayed him, before 3 years in prison had taught him that trust was a weapon people used against you. But he didn't fire her. Instead, he walked out of his office at 3 a.m., stopped by Marco's desk where his underboss was still working, and said 2 words that would change everything. "She stays." Marco looked up, confused. "Boss. Elena Torres. She stays. And no one mentions this to anyone." "Understood. What happened?" "Nothing that concerns you." Dante's voice was ice. "She made a mistake. She's human. It's handled." Marco studied his boss's face, clearly trying to read the situation. Dante Russo didn't forgive mistakes. He didn't show mercy, and he certainly didn't get personally involved in personnel issues. "Handled how?" Marco asked carefully. "By me saying it's handled. Do we have a problem?" "No, boss. No problem." "Good. Make sure everyone knows. Elena Torres is under my protection. Anyone who bothers her, anyone who brings this up, anyone who even looks at her wrong, answers to me directly." Marco's eyebrows rose slightly, but he was smart enough not to comment. "Understood." Dante left without another word, his mind already racing ahead to tomorrow morning when Elena would arrive at work, terrified and probably expecting to be fired. He needed to figure out what to say to her, how to explain why he was keeping her when every rule in his organization said she should be gone. The problem was, he didn't have a good explanation. Not one that made sense. Not one that didn't involve admitting that the photo had done something to him. Cracked something open that had been sealed shut for 9 years. Elena Torres arrived at work at exactly 8:30 a.m. the next morning, just like she did every day. Dante watched her through the window of his office as she set down her bag, powered on her computer, and then just stood there, frozen, staring at her desk like it might explode. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd probably realized her mistake minutes after sending it, and had spent the entire night panicking. Dante gave her 10 minutes to settle in before pressing the intercom button on his desk. "Ms. Torres. My office." Now. Through the window, he saw her flinch. She took 3 deep breaths, smoothed down her black pencil skirt, and walked toward his door like she was walking to her execution. When she entered, she wouldn't meet his eyes. She stood in front of his desk with her hands clasped in front of her, her entire body radiating terror. "Close the door," Dante said quietly. She did, the click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. "Sit." "I'd rather stand, Mr. Russo." "I wasn't asking." Elena sat, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. Her hands were trembling. Dante noticed she'd bitten her lower lip so hard there was a small mark. "You sent me an email last night," Dante began, keeping his voice neutral. "I know. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. Her voice cracked. "I wasn't paying attention to who I was sending it to. I meant to send it to someone else. I would never. I didn't mean to." "I know you didn't mean to." She finally looked up at him, her dark eyes wide with confusion. "You're not firing me?" "No. But I violated professional boundaries. I sent you something completely inappropriate. I understand if you want me to resign. I'll leave today. I won't cause any problems. I'll sign whatever NDAs you want. Please just..." She stopped, swallowing hard. "Please don't blacklist me from other jobs. I need to work. I have student loans in my apartment and..." "Elena." Dante said her name quietly, and she went silent. "You're not fired. You're not resigning. And I'm not blacklisting you. You made a mistake. It happens. We're moving past it." She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "I don't understand." "What don't you understand? You're Dante Russo. You don't just move past things. Everyone says..." She stopped herself, her face going pale. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." "Everyone says what?" Dante leaned back in his chair, genuinely curious. "That you're ruthless. That you don't forgive mistakes. That working for you means perfection or punishment." She was shaking harder now. "So, I don't understand why you're being kind to me. It doesn't make sense." "Kind." The word hit Dante like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had called him kind? "I'm not being kind," he said, his voice harder than he intended. "I'm being practical. You're a good secretary. Replacing you would be inconvenient. This mistake doesn't change your ability to do your job." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Dante had fired people for far less. But Elena nodded, accepting the explanation because what else could she do? "Thank you, Mr. Russo. It won't happen again." "I know it won't. You're dismissed." She stood, moving toward the door with visible relief. But just before she reached it, Dante heard himself say, "Elena." She turned back. "Yes. The person you meant to send that photo to. Are they treating you well?" The question surprised them both. Elena's eyes widened, and Dante immediately regretted asking. It was inappropriate, invasive, exactly the kind of personal interest he'd sworn never to show in anyone ever again. But Elena answered anyway, her voice soft. "There is no person, Mr. Russo. I was trying to feel brave. For myself. I took the photo and meant to send it to my best friend to ask if I looked okay. If I looked like someone who was confident." She laughed, but it was bitter. "Guess that answers that question." She left before Dante could respond, closing the door gently behind her. And Dante sat alone in his office, staring at the place where she'd stood, realizing that everything he thought he understood about Elena Torres was wrong. She wasn't trying to impress a boyfriend. She was trying to impress herself. And somehow, that made everything infinitely more complicated. Over the next 2 weeks, Dante noticed things about Elena that he'd never paid attention to before. The way she always arrived exactly on time, but never early, like she'd calculated the perfect moment to walk through the door. The way she brought the same lunch every day, a simple sandwich and an apple, and ate it at her desk while working. The way she tensed whenever Marco or any of the other men walked past her desk, like she was bracing for impact. She was afraid, not just of him, but of all of them. Dante started making small changes. He had Marco stop hovering near her desk. He made sure she took actual lunch breaks instead of working through them. He even had the office manager order a better chair for her workstation after noticing she sometimes rubbed her lower back like it hurt. His men noticed. Of course they noticed. In an organization built on reading body language and power dynamics, Dante's sudden attention to his secretary's comfort was like setting off a flare. Marco cornered him one evening after everyone else had left. "We need to talk about Elena Torres." Dante looked up from the contract he was reviewing. "What about her?" "The men are talking. Saying you're acting different around her. Saying you're soft on her because—" Marco hesitated. "Because what?" "Because you want her." Dante's expression went cold. "Careful, Marco. I'm not judging. I'm warning you. If the men think you have a weakness, if our rivals think there's someone you care about," Marco shook his head, "she becomes a target. You know how this works. She's my secretary. I'm ensuring she can do her job efficiently. That's all." "Is it?" The question hung in the air between them. Dante wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that his interest in Elena was purely professional, that the photo had meant nothing, that he was simply being a reasonable employer. But he'd be lying. "Even if it wasn't," Dante said quietly. "Even if I did care about her, which I'm not saying I do, what exactly do you expect me to do? Fire her to keep her safe? Send her away? Pretend she doesn't exist? I expect you to remember what happened with Isabella Moretti." Dante's jaw clenched. "Elena is nothing like Isabella. You don't know that. You didn't know Isabella was lying either until it was too late." Marco's expression softened slightly. "I'm trying to protect you, boss, from making the same mistake twice." "Noted. Now get out." Marco laughed, but his warning echoed in Dante's mind long after. He was right. Getting close to Elena was dangerous. Not just for Dante, but for her. In his world, caring about someone made them a liability, a target, a weapon that could be used against him. The smart thing would be to create distance, to go back to barely noticing her existence. But 3 days later, everything changed. Elena didn't come to work. Dante noticed immediately when 8:30 came and went without her arrival. By 9 o'clock, he was checking his email obsessively. By 9:30, he'd called her 3 times with no answer. By 10 o'clock, he was in his car with Marco, heading to her apartment. "This is a bad idea," Marco said as they pulled up outside the modest building in a neighborhood that made Dante's security instincts scream. "If she's just sick, if she just overslept, showing up at her home is going to terrify her. Something's wrong." "How do you know?" "I know." Dante was already out of the car, striding toward the entrance. He had her address from her employment file. 4th floor, apartment 4C. He took the stairs 2 at a time, Marco following behind. When they reached her door, Dante knocked. Hard. No answer. He knocked again. "Elena." "It's Dante Russo." "Open the door." Still nothing. Marco pulled out his phone. "I can have someone come pick the lock." The door opened, but it wasn't Elena standing there. It was a man in his mid-30s, wearing jeans and an undershirt, with the kind of cocky expression that made Dante's fists clench. "Can I help you?" the man asked. "Where's Elena Torres?" Dante's voice was deadly quiet. "Who's asking?" "I am." "Where is she?" The man's eyes flicked between Dante and Marco, and some survival instinct must have kicked in because his expression shifted from cocky to wary. "She's inside. But she doesn't want to see anyone right now." "I wasn't asking permission." Dante moved forward, but the man blocked the doorway. "Look, I don't know who you think you are. I'm her employer. And you have 3 seconds to get out of my way before I move you myself." Something in Dante's tone must have convinced the man this wasn't a fight worth having. He stepped aside, and Dante walked into the small apartment. It took his eyes a moment to adjust to the dim lighting. The curtains were drawn, the space cluttered but clean. And there, curled up on a worn couch, was Elena. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and swollen like she'd been crying for hours. There was a bruise forming on her left cheekbone. And when she saw Dante, her expression crumbled into something between relief and abject terror. "Mr. Russo, I'm sorry, I was going to call." Dante crossed the room in 3 strides and crouched in front of her, his hand going to her chin to gently turn her face toward the light so he could see the bruise better. "Who did this to you?" His voice was soft, but there was murder underneath it. "It's nothing. Just an accident." "Elena." "Who did this?" "I did." The man from the door stepped forward, his tone defensive. "But it was an accident. We were arguing, and I didn't mean to push her that hard. She just fell wrong." Dante stood slowly, turning to face the man. Every muscle in his body was coiled tight, violence simmering just beneath the surface. "Get out. This is my girlfriend's apartment." Get out before I kill you where you stand. The man must have seen something in Dante's eyes, something that transcended whatever masculine posturing he'd been about to engage in, because he grabbed his jacket and left without another word. The door slammed shut, leaving Dante, Marco, and Elena in tense silence. Elena was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. You didn't have to do that. He'll be angry when he comes back. He's not coming back, Dante said. Ever. If he so much as texts you, you tell me. Understood. Why do you care? The question burst out of Elena like she'd been holding it in for weeks. Why are you here? Why didn't you just fire me and move on? I don't understand what you want from me. Dante stared at her. This woman who'd somehow wormed her way past every defense he'd built over 9 years. He didn't have a good answer. Didn't have an explanation that made sense even to himself. Pack a bag, he said instead. You're not staying here. I can't afford anywhere else. You're staying at one of my properties. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that man can't find you. Mr. Russo, I appreciate the concern, but I can't accept that. It's too much. I'm not asking, Elena. You can argue with me, or you can pack your things. But either way, you're leaving this apartment in the next 10 minutes. She stared at him, clearly trying to decide if he was serious. Whatever she saw in his face must have convinced her, because she stood on shaky legs and walked toward what he assumed was her bedroom. Marco waited until she was out of earshot before saying quietly, You know what this looks like, right? You're moving her into your property, protecting her, getting personally involved. Every enemy you have is going to see this as confirmation that she matters to you. Then they'll be right, Dante said simply. And when they come for her, when they try to use her to get to you, then I'll make sure they regret it. Elena emerged 15 minutes later with a duffel bag and a lost expression. Dante took the bag from her. She didn't protest, and led her down to the car. The apartment he took her to was in a secure building downtown, the kind of place that required 3 separate security clearances just to enter the lobby. The unit itself was modern, spacious, and completely furnished. One of several properties Dante kept for situations exactly like this. You'll be safe here, he said, setting her bag down in the living room. Marco will have someone posted outside 24/7. If you need anything, groceries, medicine, anything, you tell them. Elena stood in the middle of the room, looking completely overwhelmed. I don't understand what's happening. What don't you understand? Any of this. Why you're helping me. Why you care if I'm safe. Why? Her voice broke. Why you're looking at me like that? Like what? Like I matter. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and impossible to ignore. Dante moved closer, slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't. She just stood there, looking up at him with those dark eyes that had been haunting him since the moment he'd opened that accidental email. You do matter, he heard himself say. I don't know why. I don't know when it happened. But you do. I'm nobody. I'm just your secretary. You're not nobody. And you're not just anything. Dante reached out, carefully brushing his thumb across her uninjured cheek. I spent 9 years making sure I never felt anything for anyone. Making sure I was untouchable. And then you sent me that photo. And what? And I remembered what it felt like to be human. Elena's breath caught. They were standing so close now. Close enough that Dante could count the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Could see the pulse hammering in her throat. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably the worst I've ever had. Your world is dangerous. Yes. People are going to use me against you. They'll try. I could get hurt. You could get hurt. Elena. Dante cupped her face gently, mindful of the bruise. I know all of that. I know every reason this is a terrible idea. But I'm tired of living in a world where I don't feel anything. Where I don't trust anyone. Where I'm just going through the motions of existing without actually being alive. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to try. With you. If you'll let me. She searched his face, looking for lies, for manipulation, for any sign that this was just another game. Dante let her look. Let her see everything. The fear and hope and desperate longing he'd been trying to deny for weeks. Okay, she whispered finally. We can try. And then she kissed him. It was soft and tentative, nothing like the aggressive taking Dante was used to. It was a question instead of a demand, an offering instead of a conquest. And it undid him completely. He pulled her closer, careful of her bruise, and kissed her back like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. She made a small sound against his mouth, something between surprise and relief, and Dante felt something crack open in his chest that he'd thought was sealed forever. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his chest. "This is insane," she said. "Completely. We're going to regret this." "Probably. But we're doing it anyway." "Yes." Dante pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Yes, we are." The next 3 weeks were the strangest of Dante's life. He moved Elena into the secure apartment and made sure she had everything she needed. He had her ex-boyfriend, whose name he learned was David, informed very explicitly that approaching Elena again would be the last mistake he ever made. He increased security around his office building and made sure everyone in his organization understood that Elena Torres was under his direct protection. And he tried, really tried, to figure out how to have a relationship with someone when his entire life had been built on keeping people at a distance. Elena made it easier than it should have been. She didn't demand anything from him, didn't ask him to change who he was or what he did. She just existed in his life, quietly transforming it in ways he couldn't quite articulate. She learned that he drank his coffee black and started keeping a pot ready in the mornings. He learned that she read romance novels when she couldn't sleep and started bringing her new ones. She discovered that he had nightmares about his time in prison and would stay on the phone with him until he calmed down. He found out that she loved terrible reality TV and pretended to hate it while watching it with her anyway. They were learning each other. Finally. For real. But happiness in Dante's world was never simple. The threat came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marco burst into Dante's office with his phone in hand and his expression grim. "We have a problem." Dante looked up from the contract he was reviewing. "What kind of problem?" "The Kozlov family. They know about Elena." Every muscle in Dante's body went tight. The Kozlovs were Russian mob, brutal and efficient, and they'd been trying to move into Dante's territory for the past year. He'd held them off through a combination of strategy and intimidation, but it had been a close thing. "How much do they know?" "Everything. Where she lives, where she works, how much she matters to you." Marco pulled up something on his phone and turned it toward Dante. It was a photo of Elena leaving the secure apartment building that morning, coffee in hand, completely unaware she was being photographed. "They sent this to me an hour ago with a message. Tell Russo we want to talk. Bring the girl." Dante stared at the photo, rage and fear warring inside him. This was exactly what Marco had warned him about. Exactly what he'd known would happen the moment he let himself care about someone. "What are my options?" Dante asked quietly. "You meet with them. You negotiate. You give them something they want in exchange for leaving Elena alone. And if I refuse, then they come after her. And boss." Marco's expression was sympathetic. "They won't make it quick. The Kozlovs like to send messages." Dante stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Elena was at her desk, completely unaware that her life had just been threatened by one of the most dangerous organizations in the state. "Set up the meeting," Dante said. "But Elena doesn't come. I go alone. They specified. I don't care what they specified. They want to negotiate, we negotiate. But Elena stays out of it. They might not agree to that. Then we'll deal with the consequences." The meeting was set for that night at a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Dante went alone, despite Marco's protests, because he needed the Kozlovs to understand that this wasn't a negotiation between equals. This was Dante Russo setting terms. Alexei Kozlov was waiting for him inside the warehouse, flanked by 6 men with visible weapons. He was younger than Dante expected, maybe 40, with the kind of cold eyes that suggested he'd done terrible things and would do them again without hesitation. "Russo," Alexei said by way of greeting. "You came alone. Brave or stupid?" "Neither. Confident." Dante stopped a few feet away, his posture relaxed despite the armed men surrounding him. "You wanted to talk. I'm here. Talk. Where's the girl?" "Somewhere you'll never find her." Alexei smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's not how this works. We asked for her. We expect you to deliver. Then you're going to be disappointed. Elena Torres is mine. She's under my protection, and anyone who touches her answers to me." "Yours?" Alexei laughed. "You keep a pet now, Russo? I heard you were getting soft, but I didn't believe it until now." "Believe what you want. She's off limits. And what do we get in exchange for leaving your pet alone? What are you offering?" This was the moment Dante had been dreading. Because he knew what the Kozlovs wanted. Territory, specifically the warehouses on the east side that controlled shipping routes into the city. Dante had fought for those warehouses for 3 years. Losing them would cost him millions and make him look weak to every rival organization watching. But keeping them would cost him Elena. The East warehouses, Dante said. All 12 of them. Full access. I'll even provide the security transfers to make it smooth. The room went silent. Alexei's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. You're serious? Completely. Those warehouses are worth. I know what they're worth. That's my offer. Take it or walk away. Alexei studied Dante's face, clearly trying to figure out the angle. There had to be a trap. There had to be something Dante was getting out of this that wasn't obvious. But there wasn't. Dante was simply choosing Elena over profit, over power, over everything he'd spent years building. Why? Alexei asked finally. Why give up that much for one woman? Because she matters more. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Maybe, but it's my decision. Alexei was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Deal. We'll take the warehouses. And the girl stays untouched. He paused. You know this makes you look weak, right? Every organization from here to the coast is going to hear that Dante Russo gave up prime territory for a woman. They're going to come for you. Let them. You're willing to fight a war over her. I'm willing to burn this entire city down for her. Dante's voice was cold, certain. So make sure everyone knows, Elena Torres is mine. And touching her is a death sentence. Alexei shook his head, almost admiring. You really have gone soft. No, Dante said. I've just found something worth being soft for. There's a difference. He left the warehouse before Alexei could respond, his mind already racing ahead to the consequences. Marco had been right. This was going to make him look weak. It was going to embolden his enemies. It was going to cost him more than just the warehouses. But when he got back to the apartment and found Elena curled up on the couch reading, when she looked up at him and smiled like he'd hung the moon, Dante knew he'd made the right choice. Some things were worth more than power. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within 2 days, 3 different organizations had made moves on Dante's territory, clearly testing to see if the rumors were true. Was Dante Russo really so distracted by a woman that he'd become vulnerable? Dante proved them wrong in the most direct way possible. He met each challenge with overwhelming force, making examples of the people who thought his compassion was weakness. He reminded the entire criminal underworld why people had feared him in the first place. Not because he was cruel for cruelty's sake, but because he was strategic, ruthless, and completely willing to destroy anyone who threatened what was his. Elena was his, and he would kill to protect her. But violence had consequences. 3 weeks after the Kozlov deal, after Dante had put down 4 separate challenges to his authority, Marco came to him with information that changed everything. We found something. About Elena. Dante looked up from his desk, instantly alert. What kind of something? Her mother. Isabella Moretti. The name hit Dante like a physical blow. Isabella Moretti. The woman who'd betrayed him 9 years ago. The woman whose testimony had put him in prison and taught him never to trust anyone again. What about her? Dante's voice was carefully controlled. Elena is her daughter. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Dante stood slowly, moving to the window so Marco couldn't see his face. Explain. Isabella Moretti married a man named Victor Torres when Elena was 10. Changed both their names, moved them out of the city. Isabella died when Elena was 16. The girl probably has no idea her mother was ever connected to you. Are you sure? Completely. I have the records. Birth certificate, marriage license, death certificate. It's all there. Dante's mind was racing. Elena was Isabella's daughter. The woman he was falling for was the daughter of the woman who destroyed him. Does Elena know? He asked quietly. I don't think so. Like I said, Isabella changed their names when Elena was young. And the girl never talks about her mother. I've had people monitoring her conversations, and she avoids the topic entirely. She must know something. Maybe. Or maybe Isabella kept that part of her life completely separate. It's possible Elena grew up never knowing her mother was involved with organized crime. Dante turned to face Marco. This stays between us. No one tells Elena. Not until I decide how to handle it. Boss, you have to tell her eventually. If she finds out you knew and didn't say anything. I know. But I need time to figure out what this means. For us. For everything. Marco left, and Dante stood alone in his office, staring at the file folder Marco had left on his desk. Inside were documents proving that the woman he loved was connected to the woman he hated. The question was, What was he going to do about it? He avoided Elena for 3 days, claiming work emergencies and important meetings. She didn't push, didn't demand his attention, just sent him worried texts asking if he was okay. Each text was like a knife to his chest. On the 4th day, he couldn't avoid it anymore. He had to tell her. Had to see her face when she learned the truth. Had to know if she'd been lying to him this entire time or if she was really as innocent as she seemed. He found her at the apartment, curled up on the couch with one of those romance novels she loved. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting up with the kind of genuine happiness that made Dante want to be a better person. "You're back. I missed you. We need to talk." Her smile faded. "That sounds serious." "It is. Sit down." "I'm already sitting." "Elena, please. This is important." She closed her book and turned to face him fully, clearly sensing that something was very wrong. "What's going on?" Dante sat across from her, the coffee table between them like a physical barrier. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. What do you know about your mother?" Elena's expression shuddered immediately. "Why are you asking about my mother? Just answer the question." "She died when I was 16. Cancer. She was a good person who worked hard and tried her best. That's all you need to know." "What was her name?" "Her full name." "Why does it matter?" "Elena, please." She stared at him for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if she should answer. Finally, she said, "Isabella Moretti. She changed it to Isabella Torres when she married my stepfather, but her maiden name was Moretti." "And did she ever tell you anything about her life before she married your stepfather? About people she knew? Things she did?" "No, she never talked about it. I always assumed she had a difficult past and wanted to move on." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Why are you asking me this? What's going on?" Dante took a deep breath. 9 years ago, I was arrested for racketeering and weapons charges. I spent 3 years in prison. The reason I was convicted was because of testimony from a woman named Isabella Moretti. "Your mother?" Elena went very still. "What?" "Your mother testified against me. She was involved with people in my organization, gained their trust, and then turned everything over to the FBI. Her testimony is the reason I went to prison. The reason he stopped. The reason I stopped trusting anyone." "No." Elena was shaking her head. "No, that's not possible. My mother wasn't involved with organized crime. She was a librarian. She volunteered at my school. She wouldn't. I have the court transcripts. I can show you." "Stop. Just stop." Elena stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "Let me guess. You've known about this for days. That's why you've been avoiding me. You've been trying to figure out if I was part of some long con, right? If I was sent to infiltrate your life and finish what my mother started. I needed to know if you knew. And if I did. If I had known my mother testified against you, what then? Would you have killed me?" The question hung in the air between them, ugly and honest. "I don't know," Dante admitted. "Maybe. Probably. 3 weeks ago, definitely. And now? Now I don't know what to do. Because you're either the best liar I've ever met, or you're genuinely innocent in all of this. And I can't tell which." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So that's what this has been. You weren't falling for me. You were watching me, waiting for me to slip up and prove I was working against you. That's not, isn't it?" She moved toward the door, grabbing her jacket. "I need to leave. I need to think." "You can't leave. It's not safe. I don't care. I can't be here right now. I can't look at you right now." "Elena, did you love her?" The question came out of nowhere, stopping Dante cold. "My mother. Did you love her? Is that why her betrayal hurts so much?" Dante thought about lying, thought about protecting himself, but he'd asked Elena for honesty. The least he could do was give her the same. "No, but I trusted her. And in my world, that's worse." Elena nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I thought my mother was just a normal person with a normal life. I never knew she was involved in anything like this." "I believe you." "Do you?" "Because it doesn't feel like you do." "I want to believe you," Dante corrected. "But I've been wrong before. And the cost of being wrong is..." "Is what? Your empire? Your reputation?" Elena's voice rose. "I've already paid the cost, Dante. My mother is dead. I grew up thinking she was a good person, and now you're telling me she was, what? A criminal? An informant? I don't even know what she was. All I know is that the man I was starting to love just told me he doesn't trust me because of something my dead mother did 9 years ago. I didn't say I don't trust you. You didn't have to say it. It's written all over your face. She left before Dante could stop her, walking out into the night despite his protests about safety. He stood in the empty apartment, surrounded by the life he'd been trying to build with her, and wondered if he'd just destroyed the only good thing he'd had in 9 years. Marco found him there an hour later, still standing in the same spot, staring at nothing. She left, Marco observed. Yes. Are you going after her? I don't know. Boss, I know this is complicated. I know finding out she's Isabella's daughter changes things. But Elena is not her mother. She's not responsible for what Isabella did. I know that. Do you? Because you just treated her like she was. Dante turned to face his underboss. This man who'd been with him through everything. What if I'm wrong about her? What if this is all some elaborate plan and I'm falling for it the same way I fell for Isabella's lies? Then you're wrong, and you deal with the consequences. But Dante, Marco stepped closer. What if you're right? What if Elena really is innocent and you just pushed away the best thing that's happened to you in years because you're too afraid to trust anyone? Fear is rational. It keeps you alive. Fear keeps you alone. There's a difference. Dante looked at his friend, this man who'd watched him build walls around his heart for 9 years. I don't know how to do this. How to trust someone when trusting someone nearly destroyed me. You do it anyway. You take the risk. Because the alternative is spending the rest of your life locked in a cage you built yourself. And if she betrays me, then at least you tried. At least you were brave enough to be human for a little while. Dante thought about that. About Elena's face when she'd walked out. About the way she'd looked at him like he'd broken something inside her that could never be fixed. I need to talk to her, he said finally. Yes, you do. But first, I need to know the truth about Isabella. About why she testified. About what really happened 9 years ago. How are you going to find that out? She's dead. But the FBI agent who turned her isn't. And I think it's time I had a conversation with him. Finding FBI agent Ross Chun was easier than it should have been. The man was semi-retired, living in a quiet suburb, apparently believing that his past was dead and buried. Dante proved him wrong by showing up at his door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Agent Chun, we need to talk about Isabella Moretti. The man's face went pale. I don't know who. Don't. Dante pushed past him into the house. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here for information. And you're going to give it to me, or I'm going to make your very comfortable retirement a lot less comfortable. Chun closed the door slowly, clearly calculating his options. What do you want to know? Everything. Why did Isabella agree to testify? What did you have on her? What was the deal? Chun moved into his living room and sat down heavily. She didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not her. Her husband, Victor Torres, was running a major drug operation out of their home. Isabella had no idea. When we raided the place, we found enough evidence to put Victor away for life. Isabella was terrified. She had a 10-year-old daughter. She was going to lose everything. Dante felt something cold settle in his chest. So you made her a deal. We offered her immunity in exchange for information on your organization. She'd been seen with some of your men, social events, parties. We thought she might have access. She didn't. No. But she was smart. She figured out how to get access. She cultivated relationships, gathered information, and gave us everything we needed to build a case against you. Chun looked up at Dante. She never wanted to do it. She cried every time we met. Said she felt like she was destroying a good man to save herself. But she did it anyway because her daughter needed her. Her daughter. Dante's voice was hollow. Elena. That was the girl's name. Isabella talked about her constantly. Said everything she did was to keep Elena safe, to make sure she had a future. Chen's expression was sad. Isabella died thinking she'd saved her daughter. Did she? Did Elena turn out okay? Dante thought about Elena. About her quiet strength and unexpected vulnerability. About the way she'd looked at him with trust even after learning who he really was. Yes, he said quietly. Elena turned out better than okay. Good. That's good. Isabella would be happy to know that. Chen paused. Why are you asking about this now? It's been 9 years. Because Isabella's daughter is the woman I'm falling in love with. And I just hurt her because I couldn't get past what her mother did to me. Chen stared at him. That's quite a coincidence. Or fate. I haven't decided which. Dante stood. Thank you for the information. I'll leave you to your retirement. Russo. Chen called after him. Isabella Moretti wasn't a bad person. She was just a mother trying to protect her child. Maybe remember that when you talk to Elena. Dante found Elena at her old apartment, the one he'd taken her away from after her ex had hit her. She was sitting on the front steps, staring at nothing, looking small and lost. "Your security detail said you'd be here," Dante said, sitting down beside her. She didn't look at him. "I needed to be somewhere that was mine, somewhere that wasn't connected to you or your world." "I understand." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Elena said, "I've been thinking about my mother, trying to remember if there were signs I missed, times when she was scared or secretive. And I can't remember anything. She was just my mom, normal and boring, and," her voice broke, "and apparently living a lie. She was protecting you." "How do you know that?" "Because I talked to the FBI agent who turned her. He told me everything." Dante took a breath. "Your stepfather, Victor Torres, was running drugs out of your house. Your mother had no idea. When the FBI raided, they offered her a deal. Testify against me in exchange for immunity and protection for you." Elena finally looked at him. "She did it for me. Everything she did was for you. The agent said she talked about you constantly, said keeping you safe was all that mattered." Fresh tears streamed down Elena's face. "I thought she was just a librarian. I thought we were just normal people." "You were normal. She made sure of that. She took a name change, moved you away from the city, gave you the most ordinary childhood she could. And then she died making sure you'd never have to know the truth. Except I do know now. Because I met you. Because I accidentally sent you that stupid photo and ended up in the middle of your world anyway." Elena laughed bitterly. "What are the odds? I don't believe in coincidence." "What do you believe in?" Dante looked at her, at this woman who was both connected to his past and somehow the key to his future. "I believe your mother did what she thought was right. I believe you had no idea who I was when you started working for me. And I believe," he paused, making sure she heard every word, "that I'm falling in love with you despite every rational reason not to. And that terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced." "Why?" "Because love requires trust. And I don't know how to trust anyone anymore. So what do? We try. We figure it out together. Dante reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "We choose to be brave even when everything in our past tells us not to be." "That sounds impossible." "Probably. But I'm willing to try if you are." Elena studied his face, searching for lies or manipulation or any sign this was another game. Dante let her look. Let her see everything. The fear and hope and desperate love that made him vulnerable in ways he'd sworn never to be again. "Okay," she whispered finally. "We try. Together. Together." Dante pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. And maybe she was. Maybe this woman, the daughter of the woman who destroyed him, was actually the one who could save him. 6 months later, Dante stood in front of his assembled organization and did something unprecedented. He stepped down as boss. "I'm tired," he told them, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Tired of violence. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of living in a world where trust is weakness and compassion is a liability." He looked at Marco, his loyal underboss who'd been with him through everything. "Marco will take over operations. He's earned it. He's ready for it. And Dante paused, finding Elena in the crowd. She was standing near the back, tears streaming down her face. "I'm choosing something different." The whispers started immediately. Dante Russo was giving up power? Dante Russo was walking away? It was unthinkable. But Dante didn't care about their whispers. He cared about the woman waiting for him at the back of the room. The woman who'd shown him that there was more to life than power and control. He walked through the crowd and took her hand. "You really did it," Elena whispered. "You're really leaving. For you. For us. For the life we're going to build together. What if you regret it? Then I'll regret it. But I'd rather regret trying to be happy than regret never trying at all." She kissed him then, in front of his entire organization, and Dante kissed her back like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Because she was. They left together, walking out of the building that had been Dante's base of operations for over a decade. Behind them, his former life. Ahead of them, something new. Something uncertain. Something worth the risk. 3 years later, Dante woke up in a house by the ocean, sunlight streaming through the windows. Beside him, Elena was still sleeping, her hair spread across the pillow, one hand resting on her swollen belly. They were having a baby. A daughter, according to the ultrasound. Elena wanted to name her Isabella, after her mother. Dante had agreed. finally making peace with the woman whose actions had inadvertently led him to the love of his life. He placed his hand over Elena's, feeling the baby kick. "Good morning," Elena murmured, her eyes fluttering open. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Too much to think about." "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" "Good thoughts. About how different my life is now. How 3 years ago I was a crime boss who trusted no one and felt nothing. And now I'm—" He gestured around the bedroom, at the life they'd built. "This. Do you miss it? The power, the control?" "Sometimes," Dante admitted. "But then I look at you, at what we have, and I remember why I left. Because you love me. Because you showed me that power built on fear had left me empty. That there was more to life than just surviving." He leaned down and kissed her softly. "You saved me, Elena. From myself. From a life that was slowly killing me from the inside out." "We saved each other," Elena corrected. "You gave me confidence. Made me believe I was worth more than I thought I was. You were always worth everything. I know that now. Because you taught me." They lay there together, hands intertwined over their growing daughter, and Dante thought about the email that had started everything. That accidental photo that had cracked open his carefully constructed walls. One mistake. One moment of vulnerability. One chance at something real. And it had changed everything. Thank you for staying until the end of Dante and Elena's journey. Their story reminds us that even the most guarded hearts can learn to trust again, and that sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us to exactly where we need to be. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional love stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had an accidental moment that changed your life? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, love is always worth the risk. The end.